This is an important week for trade. Chinese Commerce Minister Wang Wentao is in Europe to discuss the threat from the EU of slapping unilateral tariffs on China-made electronic vehicles. At the same time, media reports suggest that senior US and Chinese economic officials will meet this week in Beijing for discussions on their joint economic trajectory and policies. International trade used to be something that the average person in the world apparently didn't have to understand in detail. But with the latest trade conflicts, protectionism, unilateralism, and rhetoric against even the very basic logic of globalization, things are becoming ever more confusing and even conflicting at times. I'd like to share with you some of the basics and the most crucial updates by meeting some key figures with whom I interacted during the largest annual event of the World Trade Organization, the WTO's Public Forum, which is believed to have attracted a few thousand from all over the world to its Geneva headquarters last week. Rome is not built in one day. There are so many people that are working very hard every day against the headwinds in order to make things happen. I realize that everyone there understands the best way to build allies for global trade is to make trade and trade policies more accessible for all. Rather than being told by politicians what's the best for us, we can build our own opinions regarding what trade can do for us all. WTO Director-General Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala was making every effort to set an example. After 2 WTO ministerial meetings and a tremendous effort to salvage the public's confidence in the WTO versus the rhetoric against the multilateral trading system, she stayed strong on her important message, the significance of globalization and its effect on trade and all of us today. I was moderating the opening fireside chat between her and Professor Jason Furman from Harvard University and noticed their best tools were great analogies.
Yet I think globalization is a lot more like a dandelion than it is like an orchid. Dandelions can thrive no matter what you throw at them. Orchids are incredibly sensitive and need to be nurtured with exactly the right conditions.
So I asked Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, I know you also have another analogy, which is using a proverb. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. But I want to check with you, reality check, how is the baby right now?
The baby is teething. For any mother who's had a baby, teething time is when you don't sleep very well at night. But the baby is still there.
After that big session with hundreds in the live audience and broadcasts reaching millions, I also pushed her further on trade and globalization in an in-depth interview.
Unilateral approaches will lead to lose-lose. We've seen this movie before. Okay, in the 1930s we had that. So let's try not to do that. And the poor countries who are members of the WTO will not have the power to compete or to defend themselves against measures. So we're really worried that they would be the losers in this if we continue in this way.
If the argument is that trade can work and trade policies can work, then what about the thorniest trade issues, such as electronic vehicles? At the WTO headquarters, you would not hear much rhetoric that is typically featured by some media outlets, mainly quoting politicians. Instead of more pragmatic assessments by different stakeholders about what it might mean to them and what they hoped to see out of it.
We are embracing a lot of changes and new technology, innovation, digitization with China. And China has brought a big and rapid changes, especially on electric vehicles. You can see that, and that has a big change factor to the entire region.
For the electronic vehicles dispute, Africa is in the room. So and it mustn't parrot what China wants or what the US or the EU or Canada wants. It must champion its own interests first. So in the dispute, I think everybody will be watching that very closely.
Recent years, especially recent months, the China's EV has attracted so much attention. Unfortunately, the Chinese EV also become the target of the measures from some members. United States, Canada, also the EU. Under the WTO framework, we have an institutional arrangement to help members to deal with the trade disputes. But the litigation is not the objective. The objective is trying to find the mutually acceptable solution.
As we all know, there is no magic bullet to solve the latest EV disputes. But according to the people I talked to, there is at least a part of the WTO mechanism that parties on all sides can rely on for now while trying to figure out the biggest denominators in their negotiations. Trade is not simple. Trade policies are not easy either. I'm trying to develop my own core with knowledge and information and share it with you about trade to shield ourselves from simplistic answers, narratives, and even misleading nonsense.